Emma Walker never meant to touch the man, let alone hit him. She was just trying to finish her shift quiet. Invisible, like every other night, she cleaned the penthouses overlooking Fifth Avenue. The kind of places where the marble floors reflected the Manhattan skyline, and people like her weren't supposed to exist. But at 11:42 p.m., everything changed. She was wiping down the glass table in Lorenzo Marcelli's penthouse top floor, skyline glowing behind her when she saw it. A trembling red dot, sliding across the window's reflection and landing on the back of the man standing only a few feet away. He didn't notice. He was on a call, one hand in his pocket, Rolex catching the city lights. Calm, powerful, untouchable, and 1 second away from dying. Emma froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Her heart began to slam so loudly she could hardly hear the low hum of his Mercedes engine echoing from the private garage below. She tried to speak, but her voice broke before the first word even formed. Then the glint appeared faint, sharp on the glass tower across Fifth Avenue. A sniper. She knew that shape, that angle. Her father had taught her, back before he died, how to recognize danger faster than fear could hit. Mr. Marcelli. He turned slightly, annoyed she dared interrupt him. And that was the moment the trigger was pulled. Emma didn't think. She didn't plan. She didn't realize she was moving until her fist connected with his jaw in a desperate, wild swing meant to knock him out of the bullet's path. The shot cracked through the window. Glass exploded behind them. Lorenzo fell backward, stunned. Emma hit the floor beside him, her pulse roaring in her ears. His security stormed in instantly, two massive men, guns drawn, shouting commands she couldn't process. A knee slammed into her back as they pinned her down, her cheek pressed against the cold marble. Her iPhone skidded across the floor, the cracked screen flashing her brother's name in an unread message. "She attacked the boss!" one guard shouted. "No," Lorenzo growled, touching his jaw, eyes burning into hers. "She saved my life." For the first time, the infamous Mafia Boss looked shaken, almost human. And for the first time, Emma wished she had stayed invisible. The sniper had missed, but she hadn't. And now every camera in the penthouse had captured her face, her panic, the punch. Her life would never go back to quiet again. Lorenzo stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the floor between them. "Tell me," he said softly, darkly, "how did you see the shot before my men did?" Emma's breath caught. This was the question she feared most. Because the truth wasn't just dangerous, it was the kind of truth people died for. And someone else in the room already knew she had seen too much. And wasn't going to let her walk out alive. Emma Walker had always lived her life in the quiet corners where no one looked twice. At 24, she'd already mastered the art of disappearing, something you learn when you grow up in Queens with a sick mother, an absent father, and a little brother who depended on you for everything. Most days, she bounced between 3 cleaning jobs, a part-time shift at a laundromat, and the occasional weekend side gig just to cover rent. Nights were the hardest. That was when her thoughts got loud, when she'd lie awake staring at the cracked ceiling of their tiny studio apartment, wondering how long she could keep holding everything together. Her world was small, predictable, exhausting, held together by cheap coffee, determination, and the old Toyota parked 2 blocks away because the neighborhood wasn't safe enough to leave it closer. She never complained. People like her didn't have time to. But beneath the quiet, Emma had a sharpness she never showed. She noticed things, tiny details, angles, reflections. Her father used to call it a survival gift, something she'd inherited from him before he walked out. Seeing danger before it struck. That was the thing that saved her tonight. But now, sitting in the high-security room below the penthouse, her wrists still trembling from where the guards had grabbed her, she wished she had kept her eyes on the floor like she always did. The interrogation room didn't match the rest of Lorenzo Marcelli's world. No marble floors, no panoramic skyline, just a steel table, bright overhead lights, and walls that swallowed every sound. Emma sat rigid, trying to breathe evenly. She needed to get out. Her brother was home alone. Her stomach twisted, thinking about the unread text that flashed on her cracked phone before it was taken away. A guard stood near the corner, watching her like she was a threat rather than a maid who earned less in a month than the watch on his wrist cost. The door opened. Lorenzo walked in. Emma swallowed hard. He wasn't furious. That would have been easier to handle. Instead, he looked curious, dangerously so. A man who'd spent his life knowing exactly who to trust and who to kill. "Sit," he said, though she was already sitting. He studied her, eyes scanning every flicker of fear, every tiny movement. "You saw the shot before my men did." "How?" Emma tightened her hands in her lap. She couldn't tell him the truth. She couldn't tell him what she'd been hiding for years. Not here. Not to a man like him. He leaned closer. "Emma, what exactly are you?" She froze. Because someone else in the room already thought he knew the answer, and Emma wasn't sure she would leave this building alive. And that was the moment the real danger began to reveal itself. Lorenzo Enzo Marcelli was a man whose reputation entered every room before he did. At 32, he had the kind of power that made people choose their words carefully and keep their heads down. He wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. His silence alone had ended negotiations, broken alliances, and built an empire in the shadows of Lower Manhattan. But in the sterile, dim interrogation room, where Emma sat trembling, Enzo looked almost out of place. Too sharp, too controlled, too calm for a man who had nearly been assassinated minutes earlier. He took the seat across from her, folding his hands slowly, the Rolex at his wrist glinting beneath the harsh lights. He didn't blink, didn't shift, didn't waste a single breath. That was the thing about Enzo. His emotions were a staircase he kept locked. Anyone trying to climb it never got far. Tonight, though, something cracked. The moment Emma punched him, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Surprise. Real, disarming, unwelcome surprise. Not even his enemies had managed to catch him off guard like that. And the worst part? He couldn't stop replaying it. The fear in her eyes. The desperate speed of her reaction. The strength behind her swing. She wasn't a threat. She wasn't an assassin. But she also wasn't just a maid. His instincts, those razor-sharp instincts that had kept him alive since he was 18, told him Emma Walker was hiding something. Not something dangerous. Something painful, and that made her far more unpredictable. "Do you understand?" he said quietly. "That you saved my life?" Emma nodded, eyes down, fingers twisting in her lap. "Do you also understand," he went on, "that saving my life comes with consequences?" She looked up, confused. He exhaled slowly, leaning back. "In my world, loyalty is rewarded. But interference," his gaze hardened. "Interference is questioned." A guard stepped forward at his signal, placing a tablet on the table. Security footage played. Emma's fist, the bullet shattering the glass, her body shielding his. Enzo watched her, not the screen. "You moved before the gun fired," he said. "Not even my men reacted that fast." Emma's pulse pounded so loud, she felt it in her throat. He leaned closer, voice dropping lower, smoother, infinitely more dangerous. "People don't just develop instincts like that. They're trained into them." He paused. "So who trained you, Emma?" She opened her mouth, nothing came out. Because the truth was darker than anything he could imagine, and telling him might destroy the one person she was protecting. Enzo narrowed his eyes. "Don't lie to me." Emma's breath shook. She wasn't sure which terrified her more, the man in front of her or the person outside that room who already wanted her dead. Manhattan at night had a way of swallowing people whole. From the glittering towers on Fifth Avenue to the shadow-drenched alleys of the Lower East Side, the city was a map of power. Who had it? Who wanted it? And who pretended they didn't care? Emma Walker had never belonged to any of these categories. She simply survived the city the way the poor always did. Quietly, gratefully, invisibly. But tonight, that ended. After the interrogation, Enzo's men escorted her through a restricted hallway few outside his inner circle had ever seen. The air changed there colder, emptier, heavier. Every footstep echoed like a warning. "This way," one guard said. They entered a private elevator lined with dark walnut paneling and brushed steel. Emma had cleaned luxury places before, but nothing like this. Even the elevator felt like it belonged to someone who never had to check a price tag in his life. When the doors opened, the penthouse looked entirely different than when she'd arrived earlier for her cleaning shift. Then, it had been quiet, orderly, sterile. Now it felt alive with tension. 3 men in black suits stood near the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. One was speaking into an earpiece. Another watched the street below. A third typed rapidly on a MacBook, the screen reflecting blue light across his sharp jawline. Emma hugged her elbows, trying to stay small. Outside the windows, Manhattan glowed like molten gold Central Park, asleep beneath snow, traffic weaving like veins of light, the skyline standing tall and merciless. Somewhere out there, a sniper had taken aim at Enzo Marcelli, and she had stepped into the line of fire without meaning to. Now the city wasn't just a backdrop. It was a battlefield she didn't understand. Enzo stood near the balcony, hands in his pockets, silhouette framed against the glittering sprawl. He looked like a man born to rule this view, a man who'd never begged, never asked, never feared. "Your world is too dangerous for me," Emma whispered before she could stop herself. Enzo turned slightly, his eyes unreadable. "My world became your world the moment you threw that punch." A chill moved up her spine. Lights from a passing helicopter swept across the windows, casting long shadows across the room. Emma's reflection flickered beside Enzo's, her small, tired frame beside his powerful one. 2 lives that were never meant to touch, and yet they had collided violently. Suddenly, one of the guards rushed toward Enzo. "Boss," he said sharply, "we found something. You need to see this." Enzo's expression hardened. He looked at Emma. Whatever they discovered, it had something to do with her, and she was about to learn a truth far more terrifying than the bullet she'd saved him from. Vince Carlin had a way of entering a room without making a sound, an unsettling habit for a man whose hands had ended more lives than he cared to count. He wasn't as powerful as Enzo, not even close, but ambition made him dangerous. Ambition mixed with jealousy made him lethal. When he walked into the penthouse, Emma felt it immediately. The shift in air, the way the guards stiffened. Even Enzo's shoulders tightened by a fraction, and that alone told her everything she needed to know. This was a man to fear. "What did you find?" Enzo asked, his voice flat, unreadable. Vince stepped forward, holding a tablet. His smile was small, polite, and entirely wrong. Security pulled additional camera angles. "The ones from the hallway outside your office." He tapped the screen. Emma saw footage of herself cleaning earlier in the evening, moving quietly, wiping surfaces, picking up a glass someone had left behind. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening. Then Vince zoomed in on a moment when she paused, looking toward the window. Her brow creased, her posture tensed. Her eyes tracked something outside, right before the sniper's dot appeared. "She noticed the shooter before anyone else," Vince said, tone dripping with insinuation. Almost like she knew it was coming. Emma's breath hitched. "That's not what happened." Vince ignored her. "Boss, we ran her name. No criminal record, but no stability either. Multiple jobs, inconsistent addresses, a father with a questionable past. People like her get desperate." Enzo's jaw tightened. Vince continued, "A maid with perfect timing? A maid who looks in exactly the right direction at exactly the right second?" He clicked his tongue. "Feels staged, feels rehearsed." Emma shook her head. "I didn't know anything. I saw the reflection." "And you expect us to believe that?" Vince cut in smoothly. "A girl from Queens with an instinct sharper than trained men?" Her stomach twisted. Vince wasn't just suspicious. He needed her to look guilty. She could feel it in the way he watched her, as if he were already imagining how her disappearance would solve every inconvenience. Enzo's eyes slowly shifted toward her. analyzing, calculating, trying to decide whether she was an ally or an enemy. "Boss," Vince said softly, "let me handle her. If she's clean, we'll know. If she's not," he shrugged, "you'll be protected." Emma's blood went cold. This wasn't an offer. It was a threat dressed as loyalty. Enzo studied her face, searching for cracks, searching for truth. And then the lights in the penthouse flickered. The security alarms blared, and someone shouted from the hallway, "Boss! We've got movement outside!" The car ride felt too quiet, too smooth, too wrong. Emma sat in the back of the black Mercedes S-Class, hands knotted tightly in her lap, trying not to stare at the leather interior that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent in Queens. The driver didn't speak. The guard beside him didn't blink. And outside the tinted windows, Manhattan glowed like a different universe, one she was never meant to step into. "Where are you taking me?" she finally whispered. "To keep you alive," the guard answered without turning. Not exactly comforting. Emma pressed her forehead to the cold glass, watching Fifth Avenue rise into a canyon of gold-lit buildings. She should have been home, heating soup for her little brother, folding laundry, living her quiet, invisible life. Instead, she was being escorted like someone important or dangerous. She didn't know which scared her more. The car slowed, pulling up beneath the grand awning of the Plaza Hotel. Emma's breath caught. She had seen the place on Instagram, in movies, in dreams, meant for people who were born luckier. She had never expected to walk through its doors. Certainly not like this. Inside, the lobby glowed with chandeliers, marble floors, and polished brass railings. Everything felt warm, golden, impossibly elegant. Emma felt smaller with each step. A concierge greeted the guards with a respectful nod. Too respectful, she realized. This wasn't a normal check-in. Someone had called ahead. Someone with power. "We have instructions for Miss Walker," the concierge said, handing a keycard to one of the guards. "Suite 901, private floor." Private floor? Her stomach tightened. The elevator ride was silent. When the doors opened, Emma stepped into a hallway lined with soft cream walls and framed art she knew she could never afford to look at, let alone own. The suite itself stole her words. High ceilings, velvet armchairs, a view of Central Park dusted with winter snow, a life she had never touched. "Is this really for me?" "For your protection," the guard replied. "Orders from Mr. Marcelli." Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. Protection felt an awful lot like imprisonment when you didn't get a choice. She walked toward the window, the city stretching endlessly beneath her. Somewhere out there, someone had tried to kill Enzo. Somewhere out there, someone wanted her dead too. Her phone vibrated on the table and of the guards had returned it. A text from her little brother flashed. "Emma, where are you? When are you coming home?" I heard something outside her blood froze. Then came a second text tone that made her knees weaken. "Someone knocked on the door. They're asking for you." Emma read the text again, her hands trembling so hard the phone nearly slipped from her fingers. Someone had knocked on the door, someone asking for her. She tried calling her brother twice, no answer. Panic crawled up her spine like ice water. Before she could dial again, a sharp knock echoed through the suite. Her heart stopped. It wasn't room service. It wasn't Enzo's guards. It was too soft, too controlled. A guard stepped forward, hand on his weapon. "Stay behind me!" But when he opened the door, it wasn't danger waiting, it was Vince Carlin. Emma's chest tightened. His polite smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Marcelli wants an update on the girl's situation. Thought I'd handle it personally." The guard hesitated, confused. Enzo had given direct orders that Vince wasn't to handle anything involving Emma. But hierarchy was blurry in the mafia world, and Vince knew how to act like he belonged everywhere. "I need a moment alone with her," Vince said smoothly. "No," the guard replied. Boss said to get answers." Vince leaned in, lowering his voice. "You want to be the guy who interferes with that?" The guard faltered, and Vince stepped inside. Emma backed away until her shoulder hit the window. Snow-covered Central Park glittered far below her terrifying, beautiful, unreachable. Vince glanced around the suite. Nice place for a maid. Bet you never imagined sleeping somewhere like this. Emma said nothing. He pulled a folded document from his coat, tossing it on the table. Security pulled more footage. Care to explain why you were near the maintenance door earlier tonight? I was cleaning, she whispered. Funny, he said, because that same door leads to the roof access used by the sniper. Emma's stomach dropped. He was framing her, carefully, perfectly. Vince stepped closer, his voice low and poisonous. Girls like you always want something, money, safety, a way out. So tell me what your price was for helping them try to kill Enzo. I didn't help anyone, Emma choked out. I saved him. Or you staged it, Vince replied calmly. So you could get close to him. Emma shook her head violently. Please, I swear. Vince leaned in, expression turning cold. You're not walking away clean from this. One of us is going to decide your fate. He paused. And it isn't you. Suddenly, the guard outside the suite shouted, Sir, you need to see this now. Vince straightened, annoyed. What is it? The guard held up Enzo's encrypted phone, screen glowing with a new message. Vince skimmed it. His face darkened instantly. Emma saw the shift. Something had just blown his plan apart. And whatever it was, it pointed straight at the real traitor. The moment Vince's expression shifted, Emma felt it like the temperature in the suite had dropped 10 degrees. His jaw tightened, eyes scanning the encrypted message again, as if he hoped the words would rearrange themselves into something less damning. They didn't. The guard who brought the phone looked nervous. Mr. Markelli said it's urgent. He wants all senior staff downstairs. Now. Vince forced a thin smile. Of course he does. But Emma could see the tension in his shoulders, the flicker of panic he tried to smother. Something had gone wrong, and for the first time, Vince wasn't in control. He turned to leave, but paused at the door, looking back at her. Don't go anywhere. As if she had a choice. The moment the door shut behind him, Emma's legs gave out. She sank against the wall, hugging her knees, trying to slow her breathing. Her brother, the sniper, Vince's lies. Her world was collapsing faster than she could process. But she wasn't safe for long. A muffled voice drifted from the hallway, Vince's voice, sharp, hushed, furious. He wasn't alone. Another man spoke, someone Emma didn't recognize. She crept closer to the suite door, pressing her ear against the crack. You told me she'd be out of the way? The other man hissed. She will be, Vince snapped. Enzo's already suspicious. He calls a meeting and suddenly everyone thinks I'm the traitor? No. We flip the narrative. Make her the problem. A pause. Then Vince added, colder. By sunrise, she won't be breathing. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. The man replied, And Enzo? He'll blame the other families. Exactly what we want. Chaos works in our favor. Emma felt her pulse thundering beneath her skin. This wasn't just about framing her. Vince was planning a full takeover, and she was the easiest loose end to cut. Her knees trembled, but she forced herself to focus. She needed to warn Enzo. She needed to get out of the suite, out of the hotel, out of Vince's orbit entirely. She stepped back, scanning the room for anything she could use as a weapon. A distraction, anything. Her gaze landed on a silver service tray, polished enough to reflect her fear-stricken face. Behind her, her phone buzzed again. A new message from her brother. Emma, please answer. Someone's still outside. I'm scared. Her throat tightened. She had seconds before Vince returned. She grabbed the tray, steeling herself. Because the moment that door opened again, she knew one thing. Vince wasn't coming back to question her. He was coming back to finish her. Emma didn't wait for the door to open. She slipped out the moment Vince's footsteps faded down the hall. Her heart hammered as she moved swiftly toward the service elevator, the only exit the guards weren't monitoring. The polished gold doors of the plaza gleamed behind her as she burst into the freezing night air. Central Park stretched ahead like a dark maze. Snow crunched beneath her shoes as she ran across the deserted pathway, her breath forming white clouds. Every instinct screamed the same thing. Don't stop. Don't look back. But she did. Two men in dark coats stepped out from behind a row of trees. Vince's men. The first one spotted her instantly. There! Get her! Emma sprinted deeper into the park, dodging branches, slipping on ice. Her lungs burned, her legs shaking, but fear kept her moving. She clutched her phone in her hand, trying again to call her brother, still no answer. Please be okay, please. Behind her, heavy footsteps pounded the ground. One of the men whistled sharply, signaling another group further ahead. They were closing in, herding her like prey. Emma veered toward the frozen pond, praying the path on the other side would lead her back toward a busier street. But the men were faster. One grabbed her arm, yanking her back with brute force. She gasped, twisting, fighting him with every ounce of panic in her body. Easy, he sneered. Vince wants this clean. She slammed her elbow into his ribs hard enough to make him grunt, but he didn't let go. Another man approached, pulling something from his coat. Not a gun, a syringe, no noise, no mess. She would disappear and no one would ask questions. Emma's scream tore through the freezing air, and a gunshot cracked the night open. The man holding her dropped to his knees. Emma stumbled back as a black SUV skidded onto the pathway, headlights cutting through the snow. The passenger door flew open. Enzo. He stepped out in a long black coat, fury pouring from him like smoke. His eyes locked onto hers, sharp, protective, deadly. Emma! He shouted. Get behind me! She could barely breathe as she ran toward him. More men rushed from the shadows, weapons drawn. Enzo didn't flinch. Touch her, he warned, raising his gun, and I'll bury every one of you. But Emma wasn't looking at the gunfight forming around them. She was staring at the man stepping out from behind a tree, the last person she expected to see. Vince. Smiling. Like everything was going exactly according to plan. Snow swirled in the air as Enzo wrapped his arm around Emma, pulling her behind him, while his men neutralized the last of Vince's attackers. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, but Enzo didn't wait for police. He never did. He guided Emma toward the black SUV, his grip firm but strangely gentle, as though afraid she might collapse if he loosened it. When she climbed inside, the warmth of the heated leather seats nearly made her cry. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Enzo slid in beside her, slammed the door shut, and leaned forward. Drive, he ordered. The SUV sped off, tires skidding over slush. Emma hugged herself, her breath shallow. They were going to kill me. I know. His voice was quiet, calmer than she'd ever heard it. You're safe now. No, I'm not, she whispered. Someone's after me, and after you. And my brother Enzo's jaw tightened. We'll handle it. She turned toward him, eyes red. Why? Why are you helping me? For a moment, he didn't answer. The city lights flickered across his face, carving out the hard lines, the scar near his temple, the shadows that came from years of being feared more than understood. Then he spoke, softer, almost reluctant. Because you saved me when no one else could. Emma shook her head. I didn't save you for anything in return. I know, he murmured, surprising her. That's why it matters. They rode in silence, Manhattan gliding past Fifth Avenue stores still glowing, the plaza fading behind them, the night stretching wide and dangerous. Emma watched her reflection in the window, pale, frightened, out of place next to a man like him. When they reached the penthouse tower, Enzo helped her out of the SUV. Snowflakes landed on her hair, melting instantly. He shrugged off his black coat and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth stunned her. You're freezing, he said. Stay close. Inside the private elevator, she finally found her voice. Enzo, Vince wants you dead. He's not going to stop. I know. His eyes darkened, which is why you're staying with me until this ends. But I can't. You can, he interrupted gently. Emma, you're not alone in this anymore. The doors slid open into the silent penthouse, marble floors, city skyline, a world she did not belong to. Enzo placed a hand on her back, guiding her inside. But before she could take a full step, a figure stepped out of the shadows. A gun was already pointed at them, and this time, Emma was the target. The gun point froze Emma mid-step. Her pulse roared in her ears as she instinctively grabbed Enzo's arm, pulling herself behind him. Enzo didn't flinch. His body shifted forward, shielding her completely calm, controlled, terrifying. The gunman stood near the edge of the living room, half his face hidden under a black cap. A tremor ran through his hand, not enough to weaken his aim, but enough for Enzo to notice. "Put it down," Enzo said quietly, dangerously. "You've got one chance." The man let out a raw laugh. "Funny. That's exactly what Vince told me to say to you." Emma's breath caught. Vince. Again. Every path, every threat, every shadow pointed straight back to him. The gunman pressed a button on the side of his phone with his thumb. A voice crackled through Vince's voice, cold and amused. "Enzo, I warned you your softness would get you killed." Emma's stomach twisted. Vince wasn't even hiding anymore. Enzo's expression hardened into stone. "You really think this is going to end the way you want?" "Oh, it already has," Vince replied. "You're standing exactly where I need you to." The gunman reached into his coat with his free hand, pulling out a small device with blinking red lights. Emma recognized it instantly. Motion sensor. Her knees weakened. He wasn't here to shoot. He was here to trap. Enzo reacted first. He shoved Emma to the floor behind the marble island. The gunman fired, missing by inches as the bullet tore into the wall. Enzo lunged, knocking the gun from the man's hand, tackling him so hard the device clattered across the floor. Emma crawled toward it instinctively, fingers shaking as she picked it up. A sticky label was taped to the back. "Rooftop access 9th floor secondary sniper confirmed." Her heart stopped. "Enzo!" she shouted, holding up the device. "There's another shooter right now!" The gunman struggled beneath Enzo, gasping. "Vince said you'd never see it coming, that the maid would keep you distracted long enough." Enzo's fist connected with the man's jaw, ending his sentence. For a moment, the room fell silent, except for Emma's panicked breathing. Enzo turned to her, voice low and grim. "He's not trying to kill me anymore." Emma blinked. "Then who?" He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Vince's target isn't me. It's someone connected to you." Her blood turned to ice. There was only one person that could mean. Her brother. Enzo grabbed his phone. "We don't have time. Emma, where does your brother live?" Before she could answer, the giant window behind them shattered. A second sniper had found them. Glass rained across the penthouse floor as Enzo pulled Emma behind the heavy marble island, shielding her with his body. The sniper's second shot embedded itself in the far wall, sending dust and plaster drifting through the air like ash. "Stay down!" Enzo ordered, voice low but fierce. His guards rushed in, securing the perimeter, shouting updates over comms. Emma couldn't hear most of it. Her ears were ringing, her heart pounding so violently it blurred her vision. Enzo cupped her face, checking her for blood. His hands trembled. Enzo Marcelli, the man known for never losing control, was shaking. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice cracked. "No," he growled softly. "You're not. And this is on me." His thumb brushed a shard of glass from her cheek, lingering a moment too long. Their eyes locked. The chaos faded for a second. Just a second. Enough to feel the air between them shift something unspoken. Unwelcome. Impossible, yet real. Emma pulled back, dizzy from fear, and something else she refused to name. "We need to go," she said. "My brother, I know." Enzo stood, offering her his hand. When she hesitated, he didn't command her. He waited. That patience unraveled her in ways the gunfire couldn't. She placed her hand in his. He didn't let go. They moved through the penthouse, emergency lights casting a red glow across the once pristine space. Emma's breath hitched as she glanced at the shattered window. Moments earlier, she had been standing there. Enzo noticed. "I won't let anyone touch you again. You have my word." "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk all this for me?" His jaw tightened. "Because you keep doing the same for me." She looked away. I didn't ask to be part of your world. You think I did? He murmured. None of us choose the things that break us, Emma. For a moment, she saw past the Mafia Boss, glimpsing the exhausted man beneath, burdened by loyalty, betrayal, and blood he never wanted but inherited. The elevator dinged. Enzo tugged her closer as they stepped inside together. The doors slid shut, sealing them in warm, humming quiet. Emma's shoulder brushed his. She felt the strength beneath his coat, the steady rise and fall of his breath. Too close. Too intimate. Too dangerous. Enzo, she whispered, what if we're already too late? He looked at her, eyes darkening. We're not, he said. We can't be. The elevator began to descend, but halfway down, the lights cut out, the car jolted violently, and the elevator screeched to an emergency stop. They weren't alone in the shaft. The elevator hung suspended in darkness, the cables groaning somewhere above them. Emma gripped the rail, struggling to steady her breathing. Enzo pressed the emergency panel, jaw tight, voice low as he radioed his men. Power didn't just fail, he muttered. Someone cut it. Emma swallowed hard. Why trap us in here? Enzo didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew the answer. To stall them. To keep them away from her brother. The elevator flickered back to life, but only for a fraction of a second. 2 words flashed on the small screen before it went dark again. Check home. Emma's heart nearly stopped. No, her voice cracked. Enzo, he's at the apartment. Alone. Enzo grabbed her shoulders gently but firmly. Look at me. We're getting to him. I swear to you. A shattering crash echoed through the shaft. Metal above them screeched, something heavy scraping against the elevator roof. Someone was climbing down. Enzo pulled his gun, positioning himself between Emma and the emergency hatch. A shadow moved across the slats above. Enzo Marcelli, a voice called down, oily and amused. Didn't expect to find you stuck like a rat. Emma's stomach dropped. She recognized that voice. It belonged to one of Vince's men, the same man who earlier tried to grab her in the park. Enzo raised the gun. Touch that hatch and it's the last thing you do. The man laughed. Relax, boss. I'm not here for you. He kicked the emergency hatch open. The metal clanged as it fell, landing inches from Emma's feet. He peered down at her, grinning. I'm here for the girl. Enzo fired one clean shot. The man jerked backward with a scream, losing his grip and falling down the shaft, his body hitting steel somewhere far below. The echo faded. Emma's legs buckled. Enzo caught her. We need to move, now! As if responding to him, the elevator suddenly jolted upward, emergency systems rebooting. With a lurch, it began rising toward the lobby. Why would he say he wasn't here for you? Emma whispered. Enzo's face hardened, shadows cutting across his features. Because Vince already found another target. Emma shook her head, tears forming. No, he can't have gotten to Liam. The elevator doors opened, and Enzo's men were already running toward them. Boss! One of them called, breathless. It's your phone! A message came through priority level red. Enzo grabbed it, eyes scanning the screen. Emma watched the color drain from his face. It's your building, he whispered. Emma, they forced their way in. Her blood froze. And there's more, the guard added. They left a note. Enzo read it aloud. If you want the boy to live, bring the maid to Queens, alone. Rain hammered the cracked sidewalks of Queens as Emma sprinted down the block, her breath tearing from her lungs. Enzo's men followed closely behind, but she barely heard their footsteps, only the echo of Liam's name repeating in her mind. Her little brother, her only family, taken because of her. She turned the corner toward their building, the familiar flickering street lamp casting pale light across the soaked pavement. The Toyota she always parked 2 blocks away sat crooked, one door slightly open. A detail she never would have missed. A detail that made her stomach drop. Emma, wait! Enzo called, grabbing her arm before she reached the entrance. Rain dripped from his hair, his coat already soaked. We go in first. No, she whispered, voice breaking. If he's hurt, Enzo stepped in front of her, his hands gently but firmly on her shoulders. Emma, listen to me. I know what it feels like to lose someone. I won't let that happen to you. But you can't run into danger blind. Her knees weakened. For a moment, she let herself lean into him, the warmth of his hands grounding her in the storm. He nodded to his men. Sweep the building, every floor. Emma's chest tightened as they moved inside, weapons drawn. She followed despite Enzo's attempt to hold her back. The hallway smelled like damp carpet and old paint normal, familiar, painfully home. But tonight, every creak sounded like a threat. When they reached her apartment door, it was hanging slightly open. Her heart slammed. She pushed past Enzo and ran inside. The living room was a mess, chairs overturned, drawers pulled out, papers scattered. Liam's backpack lay on the floor, one strap torn off. "Liam!" she screamed, voice raw. "Liam!" No answer. She collapsed to her knees, grabbing the backpack and holding it against her chest like a lifeline. Rainwater dripped from her hair onto the worn fabric. Enzo stepped inside, expression darkening. He scanned the room with the sharpness of someone who'd survived ambushes more than once. Then he saw it, a white envelope taped to the refrigerator. With a warning look, he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Emma rose slowly, praying she wouldn't faint. Enzo read aloud, "Bring yourself. Leave him behind. One chance. Midnight." Beneath the words was a small drawing, a stick figure boy with messy hair. Liam. Emma's breath fractured. "He's terrified." Enzo. "He must be so terrified." Enzo folded the paper, jaw clenched with lethal intent. "We'll get him back. But Emma, this isn't a meeting. It's a trap." A floorboard creaked in the back room. Emma froze. Someone else was still inside the apartment. The creak from the back bedroom snapped every nerve in Emma's body. Enzo motioned for her to stay behind him, his gun raised as he moved silently toward the hallway. Emma's breath stopped. If one of Vince's men was still here? A figure stepped out. Emma gasped. Not an assassin, not a stranger. Mrs. Hernandez, their elderly neighbor, trembling, clutching Liam's jacket in her hands. "Oh my God!" Emma whispered, rushing to her. "Mrs. Hernandez, are you okay? Did they hurt you?" The woman shook her head, eyes filled with fear. No, mija. They came so fast. 3 men. They took Liam. I tried to call you, but they grabbed my phone. They said you'd know where to find them." Emma's knees nearly buckled. She grabbed the woman's hands, grounding herself. "Did you see where they went?" Mrs. Hernandez nodded weakly. "They kept talking about the warehouse." "The one near the old docks." Enzo stiffened. "Pier 19. Emma looked up at him. "You know it?" "It's one of Vince's old routes," Enzo growled. "He wouldn't use it for business anymore. Too exposed." He lifted his gaze to Emma. "But he would use it for leverage." Emma wiped her face with a shaking hand, forcing air into her lungs. "Then that's where we go." One of Enzo's men stepped forward. "Boss, it could be a trap." "It is a trap," Enzo replied, but he crossed a line. "A child isn't leverage." He turned to Emma. "I need to know everything you remember about that warehouse. Layout, entrances, any details. It could save your brother's life." Emma blinked. How would I know? Then it hit her. Months ago, she had cleaned an office in that same pier building. She remembered the rotting floorboards, the side door with the loose hinge, the second-story stairs missing 2 steps, the smell of salt and oil. Details she wasn't supposed to notice but always did. She straightened, wiping tears from her cheeks. "I know the warehouse. I know every corner of it." Enzo's eyes locked onto hers sharp, assessing, then shifting into something like respect. "Then, you're leading this." Emma swallowed hard. "If it gets Liam back, I'll walk into hell." Enzo stepped closer. "You won't be alone." Before she could respond, Enzo's phone buzzed. Blocked number, a single text, a photo. Emma's blood turned cold. Liam, tied to a chair, crying. And behind him, Vince, smiling at the camera. The drive to Pier 19 felt like a countdown to disaster. Rain hammered against the windshield of Enzo's SUV as the city blurred past in streaks of gray and neon. Emma sat in the passenger seat, gripping the silver service tray she had taken from the plaza, now repurposed as a shield, a distraction, anything she might need to survive. Enzo glanced at her. "You don't have to go inside. My men can, no." She cut him off instantly. "They took Liam because of me. I'm getting him out." He didn't argue. He just nodded once, a silent vow that he would not let her face this alone. Pier 19 loomed ahead. Rusted metal siding, broken windows, the smell of salt and rot hanging heavy in the air. Emma pointed out the side door with the loose hinge. "We go through there. It's loud, but it's blind to the upstairs landing." Enzo signaled his men. They fanned out, silent shadows slipping into position. When Enzo and Emma reached the door, he whispered, "Stay behind me. If anything happens, I move," she whispered back. "I don't freeze." His eyes softened with something dangerously close to admiration. Inside, the warehouse was dim, lit only by flickering bulbs strung along the ceiling. Water dripped from the rafters, each drop echoing like a ticking clock. Emma's pulse thudded in her ears as they crept up the metal stairs, carefully skipping the broken steps she had warned about. From above came a sound that sliced her soul open. Liam crying. Emma almost ran, but Enzo caught her hand, grounding her. "2 more doors," he murmured. "We do this smart." They approached the final door. Emma could see shadows moving inside. She heard Vince's voice, smooth and smug, taunting her brother. "Your sister's brave, kid, but not brave enough." Emma felt rage coil in her chest like fire. Enzo mouthed, "On my signal." He raised 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. He kicked the door open. Chaos exploded. Enzo fired the first shot, disarming one of Vince's men. Emma rushed to Liam, ripping the ropes from his wrists. He sobbed into her shoulder, trembling. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here." But Vince wasn't fleeing. He was waiting. Standing in the center of the room, gun in hand, smile razor sharp. "Touching reunion," he said. "Shame it ends tonight." Enzo stepped forward, gun aimed. "Let him go, Vince. This is between you and me." Vince chuckled. "Oh no, Enzo. This time, it's between all of you." He snapped his fingers. A hidden door behind him slid open, revealing explosives wired across the entire warehouse. For a split second, no one breathed. The warehouse lights flickered, illuminating row after row of explosives wired into metal beams, barrels, and pillars. Vince stood proud in the center of it all, as if he were conducting a twisted symphony. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, gesturing around him. "A perfect ending for all of us. But mostly for him." He pointed the gun at Enzo. Emma pulled Liam behind her, shielding his body with her own. Her heart raced so violently, she felt lightheaded. Enzo didn't move. "Vince! What the hell is this?" "A reset," Vince replied calmly. "I spent years in your shadow, cleaning up your messes, fighting your wars, watching you get power you didn't even want." He sneered. "And you think I'd stay loyal forever?" Emma's voice trembled. "You tried to kill him twice. Why drag us into this?" Vince smirked. "Because you complicated everything." He pointed at Emma. "Your little hero punch? That ruined a 6-month plan. A plan that would have ended with Enzo dead, and the organization mine." Emma's stomach twisted. "You set up the sniper," she whispered. "2 snipers," Vince corrected proudly. "Insurance. Overkill is underrated." Enzo's jaw tightened. "And killing a kid? That's leadership to you?" Vince shrugged. "Collateral damage? You taught me that." "No," Enzo growled. "I taught you loyalty." "Exactly," Vince snapped. "And I learned it's a weakness." He motioned with the gun toward a central pillar wrapped in wires. "Fun fact, 1 bullet to that trigger line and the whole building drops into the river. Quick, clean, efficient." Emma scanned the wires, the rafters, the distance. There had to be a way out. There had to be. Liam tugged her sleeve. Eyes red, voice shaking. Emma, I saw something. A door behind those barrels. It looked new. Emma turned sharply. She hadn't noticed it earlier. A maintenance exit. Maybe. Or maybe another trap. Vince followed her gaze. Oh, don't get excited. That leads to a sealed corridor. Dead end. Enzo stepped forward. Let the boy go. This ends with you and me, not them. Oh, it ends with everyone, Vince corrected. That's the point. He raised his gun. Emma screamed, lunging forward to shield Liam. Enzo fired first. Vince staggered, hit, but not down. He aimed blindly and shot at the nearest beam. The impact sent sparks racing across the explosive wires. Emma's breath froze in her throat. A single red light blinked. Once. Twice. Faster. Enzo's eyes widened. The warehouse was seconds away from detonating. The blinking red lights accelerated, each pulse stabbing through Emma's chest like a countdown to death. Smoke curled from the shattered beam, sparks racing upward toward the explosive-laced rafters. Liam clung to her waist, trembling so hard she felt it through her bones. Emma, move! Enzo shouted. But Vince was still standing bleeding, furious and desperate. He stumbled toward the pillar, gun dragging against the floor, his wild eyes fixed on the one thing he still controlled. If I'm going down, he rasped, you're all going down. He aimed at the primary detonator. Enzo turned to fire, but Emma moved first. Instinct, fear, love. She didn't know which one propelled her forward, only that she threw herself into Enzo's chest with everything she had, slamming him sideways, just as Vince pulled the trigger. A single bullet ripped through the air, missing Enzo's skull by an inch and embedding itself in a steel beam above them. A beam holding 3 rows of explosives. The warehouse shuddered violently. Enzo grabbed Emma as they tumbled behind a stack of crates. She felt the impact of his body against hers, solid, protective, anchoring her to life, while the world threatened to tear itself apart. You could have died, he shouted, voice cracking for the first time. So could you, she shot back, breathless. He stared at her, truly stared like he was seeing her for the first time. Not as a maid, not as a liability, but as someone who had saved his life twice without hesitation. Something raw flickered in his eyes, but there was no time to name it. A scream cut through the moment. Vince! He staggered toward a support beam, clutching his bleeding side. You think this ends because you saved him again? He spat. No, the detonators are chained. One ignition triggers all of them. Emma's chest tightened. Is there a failsafe? Not anymore, Vince laughed, delirious. I destroyed it when you got close. Enzo cursed under his breath. We need another exit. Now. Emma scanned the rafters, the rusted walkways, the maze of shadows. Then she saw it. A ventilation shaft halfway up the walls mall, but large enough for Liam to crawl through. She whipped around. Enzo! The vent! He looked, calculating instantly. It leads outside, toward the docks. We get Liam out first, Emma said. Then us. But Enzo didn't answer. He was staring behind her, at Vince, who had raised his gun again. And this time, he wasn't aiming at Enzo. He was aiming at Liam. Emma's scream ripped from her throat as Vince pulled the trigger. The gunshot split the air so violently that Emma felt it before she heard it. Her scream shattered into the roar of crumbling metal as she shoved Liam behind a crate. She pivoted, ready to take the bullet herself. But Enzo moved faster. He lunged across the space, grabbing Liam and pulling him low while twisting his body toward Emma, shielding both of them in one motion. The bullet hit him. A sickening sound, a sharp gasp, a blur of chaos. Enzo! Emma cried, catching him as he staggered. His weight collapsed into her arms, warm and terrifyingly heavy. Blood seeped through his shirt, darkening the fabric near his shoulder. He clenched his jaw, refusing to fall, refusing to show pain, but she felt it anyway. She felt every tremor, every shallow breath, every ounce of him fighting to stay upright. We have to move, he hissed. The charge is Emma. Listen to me, the warehouse is minutes from blowing. I'm not leaving without you. You're not leaving if I slow you down. She shook her head violently. No, don't say that. You saved Liam. You saved me. You don't get to give up now. He opened his mouth to argue, but the child's broken sob behind them changed everything. Emma! Enzo, please don't die, Liam whispered. Emma pressed her hand to Enzo's wound, applying pressure. He winced, gripping her wrist, not to push her away, but to anchor himself. You're going to be okay, she whispered desperately. You hear me? You promised I wasn't alone anymore, so don't you dare leave me alone now. Something in his eyes softened pain, yes, but something deeper, something he had buried for years. Emma, he breathed, I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of failing you. Her throat tightened. You didn't fail me. You saved my brother. You saved everything. Another explosion rumbled through the warehouse, dust raining from the ceiling. Time was running out. Emma pulled his arm over her shoulder, forcing him to stand. We are getting out of here, together. Enzo leaned on her, breath shaky. You're stronger than you think. And you're heavier than you look, she tried to joke, her voice breaking. His lips twitched into the smallest smile. They limped toward the ventilation shaft, the glow of the ocean beyond it flickering like a promise of escape. Then Liam's eyes widened. Emma! Behind you! Emma turned. Vince was still alive, dragging himself up, gun raised for one final shot. Vince's arm shook as he raised the gun, blood dripping down his wrist. His eyes were wild, unfocused, desperate, a man who had already lost but refused to accept it. This ends with me, he rasped. Emma didn't think, she moved. With one arm holding Enzo upright, she hurled the silver service tray from the plaza like a disc. The metal flashed through the smoky air and slammed into Vince's hand, knocking the gun sideways just as he pulled the trigger. The bullet fired harmlessly into a steel drum. Enzo lunged forward, using the last of his strength to tackle Vince to the ground. The two crashed into the concrete, but this time Vince wasn't getting back up. Not with a shattered wrist. Not with his body failing. Not with his empire turning to dust around him. Enzo pinned him, breath ragged, face pale. It's over, he growled. Vince laughed weakly through bloodied teeth. You think you win because you save her? Enzo didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because Emma stepped forward, Liam, clinging to her hand, and faced the man who had destroyed their lives, hunted them, used a child as bait. No, she said quietly. He wins because he didn't become you. Vince froze. And for the first time, anger drained from him, replaced by something hollow, defeated. A man who realized too late that the world he built had swallowed him whole. Enzo stood, unsteady. Let's go. His men stormed in just as the explosives timer hit its final seconds. Emma and Liam scrambled into the ventilation shaft first, Enzo crawling behind them despite the blood soaking through his shirt. They dropped into the dock's lower platform, the cold night air hitting them. And then the warehouse exploded behind them. The blast lit up the sky like thunder ripping the darkness apart. Heat rolled over them. Emma shielded Liam. Enzo shielded them both. And finally, silence. Hours later, Enzo lay in a private medical suite in Manhattan, pale but conscious. Emma sat beside him, holding his hand, her thumb brushing gently over his knuckles. You saved my brother, she whispered. You saved me. He exhaled shakily. You saved me first. A soft knock. Liam peeked in. Emma? The doctor said he'll be okay. Emma smiled through tears. Yeah! He will. Enzo squeezed her hand, voice low. Emma, stay. With me. Not as protection, not as debt. Just stay. She leaned in, forehead touching his. I'm not going anywhere. Outside the window, Manhattan glowed. No longer frightening, no longer unreachable. A new beginning waiting. And for the first time, Emma believed she deserved it. So that's it. Our story has come to an end. And if you are still here, still listening at this moment, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a real, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or a moment when life pushed you into the dark, just so you could find a light you didn't know you had. You know, the Stoics said something powerful. The obstacle is the way. Meaning, the very thing that scares you, hurts you, or tests you might be the exact thing that transforms you. Emma didn't choose pain or danger, but she chose courage. And that's what changed everything. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can control who you become because of it." And maybe that's the real message tonight. You're stronger than you think, and you deserve the life waiting on the other side of fear. If this story made you feel something, even just a little, let me know. Hit like, share this video with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe so we can keep growing, healing, and learning together. I'm still here with you, and I'm glad you stayed.